Well, good afternoon once again, and welcome into the Forget Me Not Village Streamcast. I am your host, Brian Prowitz, but I am nothing compared to the outstandingness of the founder of Forget Me Not Village, our spectacular hostess, Pam Speta, back again for another go here on the Forget Me Not Village Streamcast. How you doing today, Pam?
I am totally awesome. How are you?
Oh boy, I'm not nearly as awesome as you are for sure. Looking forward to another great streamcast today here on Facebook and on YouTube for people to learn a little bit more about dementia care and the Forget Me Not Village itself. And we have a spectacular guest to bring on the program here in just a couple of minutes. But tell me what life has been like for you for the last 2 weeks since having Teepa Snow on the program.
Oh my gosh, it's just been a huge whirlwind of activity. She's an amazing woman. Her training is positively the best of the best, and I highly recommend anybody that has someone with dementia they know and love that would like to know more about the disease and what to do. Her website at debbie-selsavage.com is thoroughly amazing. She is my mentor and she is my trainer. She's probably forgotten more in her little finger than I'll ever know in my whole life, but I do try and emulate her as much as I can because she's it. She's the authority. She really is. And she's promised to come back on again for the people that missed her the last time because we have lots of questions for her for sure.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And not only that, but people can also watch the streamcast on the Facebook channel, on the Facebook page, or on the YouTube channel to go back and see what they potentially might have missed. Wanted to say also that we do have Teepa Snow's contact information and more about not just Teepa's story, but also, Pam, your story about you and your husband, Rich, and kind of your path to getting where you're now a certified trainer in dementia care and becoming more and more well known as being one of the people on one of the good guys out there that are working really hard to try to revolutionize the way that we do dementia care in the United States. Before we jump into our interview, though, I did want to bring up a comment from last week with Teepa and just see if this might get a comment from you. Because of Teepa's training, I was able to spend the last couple of years with my dad, enjoying him and his time travels instead of being scared and not knowing what to do or say to him. I know that one of your favorite things to talk about is how revolutionized dementia care changes everything about the quality of life of not just the person who's dealing specifically with dementia, but the family too. What would you say about that?
Absolutely. It's all about the knowledge. It's all about the education. And that is definitely true for me, that statement. And I know there are so many hundreds of people out there just like that. The first thing you hear from someone is that, oh, my dad or my mom, he doesn't know who I am now. So, what's the difference we put him in a care home or not? Well, you know what? That's not true. They never forget who you are. What the problem is as the brain begins to die, it tries to make sense of what's happening. It knows something isn't functioning right. So because the brain is the most powerful organ in your body, it's going to try and figure out, well, I must be this age, or I must be that age, or this must be here or there. So in this confusion, what it actually does, it begins to go back into different files in your life, whether you were a child or you were a young adult working or whatever. And it goes, oh, I must be here at this time. So this is where I am. So what happens is as the brain begins to die, you never lose the sense of hearing unless you have something else wrong. But I mean, the dementia is not going to take the hearing part away. And what they do is they associate that your hearing, your voice that they hear is their source of comfort and peace. So when Rich would time travel, I would say to him, Rich, how old are you? And because he'd be running around the house in the bathroom trying to get ready. I go, Rich, what's wrong? Got to get ready, got to go to school. Well, I knew immediately when he told me he was going to school that A, I wasn't in his life when he was a child, and B, he must be right around 6, 7 years old because he said he was going into first grade. So I knew that any interaction I had with him had to be one of mother and child. And that's what he thought I was his mother. Even though I looked nothing like his mother, it was my voice. It was my sound. And then another time, he thought I was his fire chief at the fire station because at the fire chief, he was the one that controlled Rich's doings and what he had to do and where he goes. So that was his sense of security at that age. And another time I was a restaurant manager. So as you travel through time with him, it helps you establish that position, but they never, ever forget that you're the sense of security they need. And of course, the first thing that happens when they go into a care home, when they have, oh, he's got a new family, is they lose that voice. They lose that sense of security. And that's probably the hardest thing for them, because there's nothing familiar, not even that familiar voice they used to hear, no matter what age the brain thinks they're in.
Mm. Well, comments like that come up during the program. If you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube today, you can send us a comment and we will be able to see those. And we've already got a couple of comments coming in, and maybe towards the end of the program, we'll get into a little bit of a Q&A. But if you're watching, please make some comments, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, and we can see those and we'll feed them through into the program today. Well, Pam, I love getting your expertise on all of these different things, but today we have a very special guest that I know you are very excited to introduce. So tell us who we're going to be hearing from today. Oh my goodness.
This is a woman who has drive, determination, passion, love, all those things. I met her actually 2 years ago at a Teepa Snow convention, and we chatted just a little bit, but I still was out there trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing. But then this year, when we met again at the convention, it was like, oh my goodness, this is somebody I really need to get to know. This is somebody that, has it got together. She knows where she's going. She knows what she's doing. She's been at it longer than I have. And I'm very pleased that she has agreed to work with me, to partner with me, because the more combined voices we have together to change the way we're looking at society, looks at this whole thing, the sooner it's going to happen. And it has to have happened yesterday. Mm-hmm. So my beautiful guest, her name is Debbie. Is it Selsavage, right?
Selsavage, yes.
Okay, I just call you Debbie, so don't worry about the last name.
That's okay.
She is the founder and owner of Coping with Dementia, and her website is coping.today. Mm-hmm. You go on that website, and oh my gosh, for all you people at home that don't have a lot of time to do a lot of web searching, because being a caregiver, you're lucky to get through this 30 minutes that you've got aside. Her information is concise. It's up to date, from support groups to anything else imaginable. She recently had a conference which she asked me to be a speaker at, and I was very flattered. And of all the conferences I've been through, there's always one or two that kind of put you to sleep. Like, oh my God, not this again, or that music is really horrible. Her conference was on spot. It was informative. It was informational. It was incredibly interesting and kept my total attention through the entire conference. So she covered so many things, from grief, how the different stages of grief, what to look for, what happens when you grieve, and it's okay to grieve. She covered that. She covered music and how important that is in the life of someone with dementia. She covered faith, religion, and we've talked about that one too. She's covered things like the bloodhounds for finding someone when they wander away. I mean, information that we can use, and that's important, because I didn't have time to sit there and mess around with a whole bunch of websites to find things. Her website is very clear, and she's always available to assist. She has a unique story, one very much like my own. I would just like to introduce Debbie and turn her loose.
Well, thanks. I appreciate being here. Unique story. There's always some sort of a unique story that brings us into this kind of a world. But Albert was my husband, as Rich was yours. He was my second husband. We were married in 2000, and everything was great. We moved up to a place in Citrus County that had 46 miles of bike trail, because that was what he loved to do. And he had a really bad fall one time, and he had a concussion and cracked his helmet. So things didn't, they weren't the same, I should say. Well, when we finally got the diagnosis of dementia, We were only 5 years into our marriage. He lives about 5 years at home until it became unsafe. And we know, Pam, that sometimes our environments that we have for our loved ones may not always be safe for them.
Right.
And he started leaving the house. So I did everything that I possibly could, but Albert was 22 years older than I was, so I was still working. And the sheriff's department here was very wonderful. They brought him home, but on the third time, it wasn't so acceptable that he's getting further and further away from home. I introduced it into a day stay type of thing while I was working, and it just didn't work well for him. I should say it didn't work well for him because they want to assume that he doesn't want to walk. They don't want to do things. They weren't really adaptable to a person living with dementia. And when a person is walking, they have an automatic symbol or a sign of aggressiveness. And that's really not what they're should be looked at. Well, in my particular case, Albert was Baker acted twice. He was put through psych hospitals. He was put through restraints in a regular hospital. And I thought, through the course of 10 months, what am I going to do? He's in and out of assisted livings. They're not giving him a chance. They don't even know him. I hadn't even had a chance to meet any administrators. So about the last time he was spent about 12 weeks in a psych hospital, and that was pretty devastating on him. And even from the very beginning, he was changing without the aggressiveness of the disease, just by the change of environments. So I finally found a place that was really willing to take him. And what they did was actually what we know now is hug therapy. And the hug therapy was just that. He was on medications, but we realized that wasn't appropriate for him. So they accepted him in. And what they did is every time they saw Albert, they just put his arms out. And they just waited till he was ready. And it didn't take long, but about 2.5, 3 days later, he knew what the routine was. And he saw Joan come walking by the front window. And before she got in to the home, which was the owner, he stood up and put his arms out. And we talk about our folks living with dementia that can't learn. They can learn. They just learn differently than we do. And that's learning is based on trust, building a relationship, and knowing that they're going to be there for them. Being loved, cared for, and in a safe environment. Well, it was really, truly amazing. Albert didn't have any medications. He never had another behavior issue. He wasn't aggressive. They loved them through it. And that was the name of the conference, because not a lot of people understand you can love them through it. And you can really benefit from it. And what they did is what she promised me from the very first time I put my eyes on Joan. She said, we'll love Mr. Albert through it. And they did. But what they also did, and what is unique about what you're talking about in Forget Me Not Village, is while we are loving them through it, we also have the other component in this is educating the family to be able to love them through it. And I learned that he was still in there. He was still the person that I remember. He just was changing, as Teepa always says. And one of the comments that Brian was mentioning, I do support groups, as you say. And, when one of those folks get it, it's just really quite beautiful. So when you were talking about time travel, this little incident of her husband was sitting there as they were watching TV eating apples. And he looks over to his wife and he says, "Hun, there's some Russians in the house." And she said, "Are they wearing their uniforms?" And he looked over and he said, "No." She said, "Oh, do you know if they're coming or going?" And he looked over again. He said, "I'm not too sure." And she picked up the apple and she says, "Well, maybe they're just here to get an apple and they'll leave." He said, "Maybe so." And they never heard another comment about the Russians again. But it was such a beautiful way to time travel with him and not be afraid. We don't have to be afraid of our folks living with dementia. We don't have to be afraid of our folks living with dementia. It's really quite a remarkable journey if you can learn to get into it. So you, like a lot, and me, like a lot of other folks, I think we learn as we experience this, and we get better because we get more objective and we're not so emotional.
Yeah, I agree. That's huge. That's huge. But it's so hard not to get emotional when you don't understand what's going on.
Correct.
Well,
and there's a lot of hurtful things that come from this disease, and we can't change that. And it's really quite remarkable, in part of our conversation today in the support group just a little bit ago, was how do we talk to our friends? How do we talk to our family? How do we talk to our grandkids? That is a really needed component in all of this, is to educate. All of what we talk about and what TEEP has been doing for 40 years is education.
Yeah.
And we have to have that education component in this whole disease. We can't isolate them. They shouldn't be embarrassed by it. It's not their fault. It is the disease that we still don't know of a cure. That means that we still don't know how we get it.
Yeah. Well, and then Teepa brought up last week about the COVID and the blood-brain. And they're finding people that had COVID come out of it with memory problems, showing early signs of dementia that may not have had dementia before the disease. So, when you start talking about numbers, they're going to get huge really, really, really quick.
Fast.
And if we don't fix this, if we don't have some sort of a solution for this, it's going to be catastrophic. It's going to be, I can't even imagine what kind of situations will come up to try and care for these people that are going to need 24/7 care.
Well, we're talking about coming out of a pandemic.
Yeah.
We've been dealing with an epidemic for quite a while.
That's
because
right.
the baby boomers have hit their 70s. And if we do not do something different, to compare what Albert went through is being in a larger community, maybe several floors, many rooms, many staff, many family walking around. It's not a matter of him not doing well there. It wasn't just a conducive, safe environment for him. What he ended up in is a community similar to yours, a smaller home that had more control of their staff coming in, less stimulation of family members in and out. And it was a 6-bed community that he could go out in the backyard. He could play with the dogs. It was completely different than a larger community. I'm not saying that they're good or bad. I'm just saying that everyone has to find a way of meeting the needs of a person living with dementia. And that takes a lot of creativity, but you have to learn who they were. When you're talking about time travel, that could be some of the most exciting times to get to know a person. They don't have to be scary, especially when I'm not emotionally connected. They can be for us, who may be forgotten along the way, depending on what's going on, but they can be who that person is.
Yeah.
And it's just an incredible journey to put some of these folks in a place and not see them thrive when it can happen.
Yeah. And I told you before the show that we had a 4-hour conference call with the Dementia Village that has been in existence for 18 years.
18 years, yeah.
18 years over in Amsterdam. Hoedwag, I think is how it's pronounced. And when I saw the videos of how they treat their people and what their village looks like, I couldn't help but cry. Because I thought all I wanted was quality of life for Rich. All I wanted was somebody give him a hug, like you said your husband could. In Little Roseburg, Oregon, we're so limited in what we can do. It's the big institutions pretty much or nothing, because anything smaller has a real hard time surviving on all the
Correct.
mandates. So, and they're getting smaller and smaller. There aren't as many as there even was when Rich was around. But these people were, and their stages went to 7 was the worst. So every person, 127 people, were all stage 7 dementia, which means the next point they pass away. These people are up, walking around, riding bicycles, eating off of china, believe it or not, having knives that they eat with at the table, all things that I couldn't do. They were enjoying wine in the afternoon. If that was what they enjoyed doing, this place allowed them to continue to do it. And I asked them, I said, so you're serving them wine, is that going to be the best thing for them? And they looked at me and they said, these people are going to die.
Right.
They're going to die. As long as there's not some catastrophic effect of that thing.
Correct.
Why not let them have life lived the fullest and have them think they're as normal as possible?
And, the fact that that could have been part of their life.
Yes.
We can't take away the things that used to be part of their life. We had a resident that I had that her and her husband sat down for a glass of wine at 5:00. It's what they did. And I would honor that, but she also had other issues. So I went and got wine glasses and asked her if she was ready to have a glass of wine with me. And we used cranberry juice because that warded off other things. And you could see her completely relax. It was part of it. It is our muscle memory that says, wow, this is good. It's 5:00 somewhere. We all talk about it. But it is it's a consideration of their dignity.
Absolutely.
And to have an appropriate place that doesn't have to be in a wheelchair, because our folks do not have to be bedbound in wheelchairs. Albert wasn't. He was fully functioning to the day he couldn't. He was eating, he was walking, he was perfectly fine like that, but he just couldn't live alone. And that shouldn't be a punishment. It shouldn't be a punishment because he can't do that he is treated inappropriately or doesn't have an appropriate place to be who he wants to be. He was a 20-year military person. I don't know about you, but spending 20 years in a submarine would be enough to drive me out of my cotton picking mind. And then when he gets out of the service, he's now a test pilot for Lockheed Martin. That's other ends of the spectrum. And then a test pilot or a trainer for Bell Helicopter. So this was not a man that couldn't manage what he needed to manage. And it was also a man that had to keep his temper in check for the jobs that he did. And he wasn't aggressive. He wasn't that person that they said he was. He was a kind person, just like you talk about Rich.
Yeah.
And they deserve that. They deserve a quality of life. But on the other spectrum is so don't us as family members. We deserve the same quality of life to know that we did the very best that we could to find an appropriate place for them. I think what the Forget-Me-Not Village gives to me is hope that we are going to start to change, is hope that we need to look at things a little differently for a culture that is going to be influxed with a lot of folks with dementia. I know you're in Oregon, but Florida is the place that people retire. And right now we're dealing with 580,000 people in the state of Florida that are living with this disease. That's a whole lot of folks that shouldn't be shunned aside. And we shouldn't really have our caregivers feel that there is not an option. And I think that's what the Forget-Me-Not Village gives us, is there's an option and there's an opportunity. Not only for quality life for my person, but maybe also getting the support that I need from other people going through that. And when they're having a rough patch, I might be having that good patch.
Mm-hmm.
And we work together to get through the next day, the next hour, or the next week, whatever it might be. It's a remarkable thing. And when, like you said, when you look at Hoganvow or Hogan Way, or it does give you some satisfaction that they have done what they've done for 18 years to give a whole lot of people more than what families might have thought they could have gotten.
Absolutely. And, they have got the evidence, they've got the tracking to show that what they're doing is a success because they've been where we are. So they know what that result was, and now they can compare it with what they're doing now. And it's incredible the difference when you go from a patient taking 18 meds on an average a day down to 4. That's an improvement.
Oh, absolutely. I had someone that told me that their mother moved into a assisted living and they had 37.
Wow.
Now, I don't know how you would manage 37 medications. And are they really worth it? So I think that there's such a lot of benefits. I also think that there would be less caregiver burnout for our professionals because there is a support and a cooperation between families so that we're all on the same page. I think some of the comments come from, or some of the anxiety comes from not knowing what's going to happen.
Right.
And not knowing what you're going to do with my husband when this happens. There's always an uncertainty that in our country right now, if they don't do what we tell them to do, we can Baker Act them, or we can kick them out, or we can move them somewhere else. That's not fair to us as spouses or parents or children.
Yeah,
so
that was awful. So Brian said he's got some comments that he wants to talk about.
Yeah, let's pop into that. We've had Sydney Kennedy has been watching this entire time. I think she is from San Diego, and she popped up with they hook up with us emotionally always, as we were talking earlier. And then she really was excited about hug therapy and said, thank you for sharing, and how important it was also for people to enjoy relationships. So I just wanted to throw those little comments from out there in the off of Facebook for you guys to talk about, if any of those things.
Well, you know what you just mentioned, Brian, about hug therapy. There's a lot of therapies that we're not using in place of pharmaceutical therapies that we could use. And what our folks, when we see them in distress, it's a lot like a post-traumatic stress disorder where they are afraid of. In Albert's case, he was kicked out of 3 homes, and in hospitals and psych hospitals, he didn't trust the people, so he didn't venture to learn. And that wasn't his job, actually, but he was afraid of, who do I trust, who don't I trust? And when Joan just started, and everybody that ever saw him just kept waiting and putting their arms out, and then one day he did it, and it was just a loving environment that taught me that there is something different out there. It can be different. It really can be different. And I think that's some of what Pam says, is it can be different. Not that we know that it needs to happen. It can be different.
Absolutely.
We know we need it, but that's not necessarily what everybody listens to. It can be different. It doesn't have to be that way. There's some wonderful stories of people that have been in this journey. Wonderful stories. It changes your life, as it has with Pam and Teepa. It changes your life. Changes your life.
Yeah, it surely does. Surely does. Wow. Part of this, what we're doing is trying to get feedback from people, the more people we have to rally around change, the easier it's going to be, because sooner or later, they're going to have to listen to us. So I want to encourage everyone that sees this to share this video with everybody you know, and then ask them to send me a message on the Forget Me Not, your feelings about it. Do you if you have comments, if you have questions, you think it's a good idea, a bad idea, whatever. I also encourage you to look at the website over there in Amsterdam, and get familiar with what is actually possible to do.
It can be possible.
So next week, what I'm going to do is I've got a friend of mine up here in Roseburg that is actually starting a caregiving agency where she's going to train caregivers on how to work with people with dementia.
Mm.
So she's going to come on next week, and she's going to talk about the different types of caregivers and what options you have and what you can expect and what they will do and that type of stuff. But I'm also going to start doing on every video one thing that I did to my home that made life a little easier for me and for Rich. So each week I'll bring in something that I learned, because there was nothing out there that told me what I could do when he tried to pick up a window. So, stuff like that. Yeah,
so much easier. So much easier for a man to do that. We're such a disadvantage, us women, in that. But those are things that do happen. And it is unfortunate, and it is, quote, embarrassing for us. My husband, if he knew that he would never do that. Of course he wouldn't. But those are the things like, oh, well, we didn't meet his need today. I guess we have to be a little bit better on meeting his need tomorrow, because maybe we won't want that to happen again.
Yeah. That was very interesting, and sometimes an embarrassing moment, and then you can't pee outside like that. Well, why not? I've done it all the time. Oh, no, not beside the highway. No.
But you have to. You just have to take in what you can, change what you can, but all their behaviors, their verbal words are all an unmet need.
Absolutely.
And we can change that. It's not what they did that we have to look at and say, you shouldn't do this. Maybe we have to look at it and say, what triggered that behavior? And it might be that you didn't know that I had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Awesome. Thank you so much. You're just an amazing
person. I'm
so glad I met you, and I'm so glad to know that we're going to be able to work together and
absolutely
get this thing taken care of.
It takes a village.
It's a village. Isn't that what Hillary said? It takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to raise a man or a woman in dementia.
Correct.
So,
correct.
Well, before we say goodbye, Pam and Debbie, Sydney did come back and ask, how do caregivers take hug therapy into communities? So if you wanted to give us maybe 30 seconds on that, and then we want to find out, Pam, what's up in your schedule here for the next couple of weeks because of how busy you've become and the phone calls that continue to come in. So what do you say first about how to take like an idea like hug therapy? How would you introduce that?
Well, we take for granted that the person we think is not in there. And so we have no right, as you will learn in hundreds of videos from TIPA, if we approach them in the right way, we ask them for a hug. And if they respond, that's fine. If not, I'll get you next time. And then eventually they'll be waiting for you. There isn't anyone on the earth, unless they don't like hugs, that doesn't understand what that means to them. And you just have to give them time. It just takes a little bit of time. But in my case with Albert, they said it was only after the tragedy and the trauma that he was in, it was only a few days. And then that was it. He trusted them enough that they were there for him. It only lasted 4 months, but.
And I think that's the same thing with the voice, the security in the voice. As humans, most of us enjoy human touch, which is what people haven't had in the last year, for sure, because of COVID, but we respond well. And, I have always tried to hug my friends, hug new friends, hug old friends, because that's just the way I am, because I want them to know that I'm sincere and I really care about them, unless they're sick or whatever, but whatever. Yeah. So yeah, I truly care about them. So hug for me, and you have hug in a mug, don't you? Yeah. So a little mug that says hug in a mug, which is really, really pretty cool.
So you just have to give them. And so, when you're talking about TIPA has videos that you can see. One of them I have on my newsletter this month was, can I give you a hug? And we respect them enough that we have no right to just jump in and do that because we feel that we want to do that. We have the right to ask them and wait for their answer. More than not, they'll accept that. And they'll remember that because it's not what we do, how we do it, but they remember how we make them feel.
Cool.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
today here on the Forget Me Not
Appreciate
Village Streamcast. We hope that your network of friends and fans and family will share this throughout their network in Florida and every
Sure.
place else that you potentially might be watching this today.
Sure.
We want to thank Sydney and others who are watching here today. Hold on, Debbie. We want to talk to you again before you leave, but we're going to take you off the screen for just a second because I want to get Pam to kind of preview what's ahead for you for the next couple of weeks. Pam, you got anything exciting?
Well, I have a Parkinson's group that I mentor, and they want to do boxing. So for the next few days, it's called Rock Steady Boxing for people.
Boxing? You don't mean packaging things in wrapping paper. You mean physically punching, right?
Yeah, just not each other.
Good. Okay.
So that's my mission for this week, is to find resources on where we can do some boxing, for Parkinson's. So anybody out there that's got some ideas, please let me know, because they're feeling the effects of not being able to exercise because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And they actually got to the point that the risk of coming together with other people that they also knew had been quarantined was of more value, and exercising was more value than sitting home and watching the symptoms get worse. So, I welcome anybody else that would like to join our Parkinson's group. We have a different subject every week we work on. Next week, we are going to talk about CBD oil and how that affects Parkinson's and whether or not it's safe and what to do. So, that's coming up on this agenda this next week, because I've already started on it. So.
Well, great. We want to let people know they can reach out to you at pam@forgetmenotVillage.org, and we'd love to send everybody who sees this over to forgetmenotVillage.org. You can see a video and see the schematics of the actual, the blueprints, essentially, of what's happening for the village here in Roseburg, and it takes money. And so we want to ask people out there to make a contribution to this cause, and you can do that at the website as well, or you can get in touch with Pam if you want to do something else. You can actually put the name of a loved one on a hallway or an office or a doorway or the front door, as a matter of fact, so of several buildings. So there's a lot of ways that you can remember people that you love and have loved, or maybe have lost to dementia, that you would like to memorialize forever in a place where people will be healing. And so we just want to make sure that we are very clear about that request, because that's the only way you're going to get there, Pam.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So any final thoughts here before we sign off on today's program?
No, I think Debbie did an amazing job. Can't wait to start working with her. It's going to be, and the village over there in Amsterdam, I'll be helping them. They're going to help me. I think what you're going to see come out of this is something revolutionary and amazing. I just can't wait to get started. It's going to be so much fun. So much fun.
Terrific. All right. Well, we'll be back again in a couple more Thursdays. We're going on the first and third Thursdays of every month at 2:00 Pacific time. So you can put that in your calendar or come back and watch later. That's the beauty of what we're doing here with this Streamcast idea on Facebook and on YouTube. You can see the videos as we do them live or watch them later on. So, well, Pam, we have another one in the box here. We did another Streamcast, and hopefully you'll just continue to reach more and more people all the time.
That's the goal. That's the goal. Keep on it going. They said me in Amsterdam, you have to have guts, and I'm going, yeah, I think I got that. I don't have a problem with that.
Well, you've got guts, and you've got brains, and you've got know-how, and you've got a lot of experience, and hopefully there'll be a lot of other people that also see that and get involved in this whole project.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Perfect.
Excellent. All right. That's the Forget Me Not Village Streamcast for today. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks, and hope that you share this with your friends and family and other people who are dealing with dementia, to help educate people and to continue to grow this effort. We'll see you again soon at the Forget Me Not Village Streamcast, and we hope you have a good day.